Hi all, I believe I have a very instructive game to show you today between Levon Aronian 2797 against Jobava. This was in the Tata still on the 20th January, so Baadur Jobava playing black. D4 from Levon. I think this game is really instructive for having real faith and trust and resourcefulness around one's own trump cards. What I mean by trump cards, the advantages one has from the opening. Often there's a trade in any opening where you get certain advantages and you give your opponent other advantages, but it's how well you use them which I think distinguishes, good players from strong players from grandmasters. And we see here, let's see the opening, slightly quirky from Baadur Jobava. He's had a reputation of playing some quirky openings, sometimes with great success. In the Tata still not so much this time, 2015, he's lost quite a few, but he's a very creative, exciting player to watch, and when he is playing well, it's a real delight when he combines quirkiness with winning as well. But let's see what happened in this game. Playing black against Levon Aronian, he plays c5 here, which isn't so solid and respectable as the Grunfelds, the Slavs. He's giving white this space advantage, as though we're going into a Benoni type system, delayed Benoni, because black hasn't played the immediate e6, so delaying, or d6, hasn't played either of those pawn moves. So for the moment, after e4 castles, bishop d3, solid choice here. Even though it seems it's behind its own pawn, actually this bishop might have attacking potential later. e6, so we're getting that kind of classic Benoni structure now, or are we? E takes d5, and actually the most common move is not to take on d5 with the c pawn. It's actually to play e takes, 15 games in the live book, and only one with c takes. I think it reduces counterplay quite significantly. There's no target on the e file for black. Both sides are sharing the e file. If you look at the semi-open file situation, if there was a semi-open file situation, this c pawn isn't so significant to the semi-open e file. Sometimes in the Benoni you get good counterplay, and there's also a pawn majority here, but often d6 is a weakness. I mean, there's downsides there, but in this situation with this structure, with both sides sharing that e file, it seems also the bishop is more liberated now on that diagonal. This is going to be a difficult position sometimes for black to create counterplay. He's actually got a space disadvantage without too many upsides at the moment. a6, white just simply clamps down on b5. So in terms of pawn breaks, where is black's counterplay coming from? He actually leaves the d6 square vacant because it might be a good blockade maneuver for the knight. In fact, a strange looking move is played here. Perhaps d6 is, though, to be considered. This looks fairly strange, this next move, a5. It just weakens b5. So when a knight just goes to b5, how is it repelled? It's never repelled. So it's just giving up that square. Knight ge2, but the point is to get a knight entrenched on b4. So bishop g5, knight b4. So you can say that black has some queenside influence if black has any trump cards compared to white. And he also wants to grab perhaps this bishop. White denies that. He might be keeping this bishop for aggressive intentions against black's king side. We see b6, and the future prospect of this bishop is real. That might at least try and encourage white a defensive move. Say b3 would weaken this diagonal, or any other move would be distracting resources. But here I think, okay, after castles, bishop a6, white finds better actually in knight b5. He doesn't mind having double pawns here if black did take. Although that is from an engine perspective, taking on b5 might be a good idea here, because white positionally might consider a positional move just to reinforce the knight and avoid any double pawns. But if black did give up the bishop here, a takes, this is a pleasant position for white. And note, though, there's also a fantastic resource available in this position, rook a3. If white wanted to swing a rook, it's possible there. That's something to note here, this a3 square. So knight b5, it wasn't taken here though. Black actually played h6, And the obvious choice, I think, for most players would be to retreat the bishop here to h4. But there's a very interesting alternative played, which keeps things quite amusingly attacking, I would call it. The bishop just drops back to c1, and the reason I think this is quite amusingly attacking is that both bishops are actually staring down at black's king side here. Combine this with the rook a3, we have a storm brewing, it seems, against black's king side. Now, in terms of the instructive theme of the video, I think white really, if he can make use of these simple attacking trump cards, might be able to just ignore black's activities on the queen side. But black kicks off with bishop takes b5, and white now takes with the a pawn, which is the more solid choice. If he takes with the c pawn, and d5 is dropping off, so he takes with the a pawn. And now knight e8, as though d6, and there's harassment of white's queen side. So black's trying to generate something with the knight pressure on the queen side. I mean, that knight's installed, but its influence is actually limited. It's not really going to help, for example, in defense of the king. There's no real pawn breaks at the moment. There is pressure on this diagonal, but this bishop is not only attacking, it's defending b2. Now we get this other attacking piece potentially in the game now, rook a3, this neat rook shift. In this tournament, this kind of third rank attack has been spectacularly effective in, I think, quite a few key games, which I'd like to go over actually on the channel. This third rank attack is really something to learn from this tournament generally. It seems very, very dangerous once a rook gets involved like this for king safety. But knight d6, and here is the real moment of genius. Because even the engines, if you give this position to engines, the immediate, especially on a slow computer or a bad engine, I think the immediate concern would be to try and protect the pawn in some way. But in doing so, white's attack would vanish. The respect for one's own trump cards, all these attacking pieces and the attacking potential, needs to be very strong sometimes. So strong, sometimes you've got to just ignore the opponent's activities, because you need every single resource and every single move at your disposal to make use of your trump cards. And I've noticed this from a recent over the board game of mine. I was a bit distracted by my opponent's queen side activities. I used some resources on the queen side when in fact I could have created focal coordination pressure on the attack. One of the beautiful side effects of the attacking player is that they are coordinating like pressure on pressure points, and here there's a wonderful coordination being built up on actually the g6 square, just letting c4 go. And if you give engines this with longer time to think, they come up with the same move. They start to ignore the c4 pawn, because there's gigantic focal pressure which can be built up, and let black spend some time winning a pawn or two. So black does actually take this pawn, and we see this artistic effect now. Knight f4, and everything is being focused on g6. Look at this g6 and h6 as well. It's going to lead to a breaking sacrifice to rip open black's king. But also there's a major, more subtle idea here, that with this rook on g3 there's a potential pin on the cards. There's already an x-ray for a pin, but it's revealed even more when white plays knight h5, then takes bishop takes is devastating. Knight h5 is really dangerous. So black already is under great pressure to try and defend this accurately, and maybe he slips up here. He doesn't play the most optimal move. It's already a really difficult defensive situation here. He plays knight e5. Let's see if he plays like queen f6. Knight takes. We've got the f2 protected here, so we can afford rook takes. There's no queen f2 check or anything. Queen d4. Bishop takes, and white's going to be a lot better here. Queen h5. The attack just rages on with very, very strong threats in this position. So that's just a really dangerous position for black. So that natural queen f6 or queen e7. Again, I mean, white could actually take choices here how to play this. Bishop takes g6 might be good here with that fork. And then something like bishop takes h6. This is really dangerous stuff. For example, like this, check, Queen G4. It's just extremely dangerous attacking potential once it gets started. So you get the picture. It's a really dangerous position here, but I think it expresses great determination to use the trump cards and not be distracted by the opponent's plan, by the opponent's activities, to try and get every single move possible and every single resource summoned, and you get these kind of coordination points of the attack. So knight e5 at least trying to defend g6 a bit more, but in comes knight h5 now. So the point is that defensive bishop, you know, it's looking after some dark squares. If g takes, then actually, you know, bishop takes is very strong, even queen takes is very strong, but bishop takes simply, if the knight tries to interrupt, queen takes, this is a really dangerous attack. White's going to be taking and then taking on g6. For example, this would be like devastating. Rook takes as a forced mate, this position apparently. So check, bishop g6. This is like forcing a mate soon. So you get the picture. Great carnage because of these focal points around the king. So that shows great faith that, you know, this masterful attack, just only a pawn, losing a pawn to gain a lot more, you know, focus on the king side. So black plays queen h4, and this key defensive piece is now removed. Knight takes, and now rook e1, which not only hits the knight but also promises to evict the queen with rook e4, or get even this rook involved in the attack. So black is on disaster mode now. It's very, very difficult to defend this. He plays d6, rook e4, kicking the queen. Now you might think, can the queen use f6? It actually went all the way back to d8. If she uses f6, in this position f4, and here, this is really dangerous. This is an awkward diagonal. Perhaps black didn't really want things like bishop d2, so threatening bishop c3. This position is precarious for black with that queen on that diagonal. So maybe black wasn't interested in the queen like sitting there, but also even if knight here, then f5 is also strong, and this rook can also come in sometimes for the attack if needed. But there's all sorts of threats here. Queen h5, f takes, but even bishop takes immediately, or b3, even for trying to get on this diagonal later to get the queen out, so under the right circumstances as a decoy. So yeah, it's a really, really dangerous position. So yeah, the queen went all the way back, and the game finished abruptly. Now this position was actually shown on Reddit, you know, white to play, and in fact there's two real killer moves that are available to white, at least two really killer moves. We're talking more than +8. Can you spot either of them if I give you 5 seconds to pause the video now? So starting from now, it's the final move of the game. Okay, either rook takes e5 or queen h5. They achieve the same result, that g6 is getting dismantled. That's the major focal point. Queen h5 was the one played. Yeah, this defensive knight here is not exactly reinforceable by its fellow knight. So as a simple example, let's test the water with rook h8. If this had continued, we just carry on our amazing focus on g6. We take care of getting rid of the defense of g6. Bishop takes, wallop, and black's just getting smashed. It's a forced mate in 4, this position. Bishop takes, check, mate. It's really crushing. It shows the immense focus of the attack and total belief in his trump cards, trying to find the supporting resources and sacrifices for white's space advantage, and, you know, attacking pressure generally on the king side resulted in this very, very short game. You know, 24 moves. It's a real crush. But to be fair, I don't think Jobava was having a great time this tournament. It might not be the greatest tournament ever of his life or the greatest fun, but in the tournaments which he's playing well, as I say, he's a fantastic player, and that's why, you know, he's over 2,700. But he can have up and down results, to be fair. In this game, he was on the defensive, though, you know, from the start, without too much counterplay. And it seems, you know, Levon really had, he gave his trump cards, you know, the full support and attention and respect they deserved. I think maybe, you know, a lot of us, we pandering, especially if our opponent was over 2700, pandering to look after c4 here. You know, if we play a move which is suggested as a second choice by an engine here, b3, second choice, or maybe lower engines would have it as the first choice, we wouldn't have any focus on g6. We wouldn't have any focus at all. This rook would never be an attacking piece. Knight f4 though is mentioned as well, giving up c4 here to get the rook in. The important thing is to get the attacking resources to the king side. Combinations rely on attacking resources being available and coordinating. With that focal point here, and not spending any time, that's a crucial moment for the rook swing, which has been so decisive in this tournament in other games, which I'd really like to go over soon. So yeah, giving up the pawn, I mean, yeah, it's a dangerous position, because where is black's counterplay anyway in this position? There's no clear pawn breaks, there's all this kind of pressure on his king side, and it's difficult for, you know, the rooks to do anything. The knights are not doing much, the rooks are not doing much. Black seems to be like a sitting duck, the proverbial sitting duck in this position, just waiting for an execution. So he takes on c4 while waiting, but yeah, we've got four pieces now, you know, coordinating. Sorry, three pieces coordinating on g6. There's going to be a fourth soon, with the queen coming in. It just leads to a very, very elegant game. I think one of the most elegant in the whole tournament, in my view. Just made to look very, very simple. But I think it expresses this underlying notion that you know, strong players, when they get hold of trump cards, you know, they don't let them go. They actually use them. Maybe, you know, lesser players don't actually use. We don't actually use our trump cards to the same level, because we're not finding the same attacking resources and prepared to sacrifice things to get a bit more time. You know, often ignoring the opponent's apparent counterplay, which we might consider, oh, we got to look after that first. We got to look after that first. No, you know, this game shows a kind of willingness to, you know, to throw everything on the king side, and it really worked like a treat. There was an eviction of the queen, you know, so that queen h5 becomes possible. And, you know, two killer moves. Rook takes e5 would also, you can do it with this move order. This works as well. There's no major problem here. If, you know, black takes, he's still going to get wallops on g6. Rook takes g6 here as a mate in 3 if the rook didn't move. Everything's like coming together for this attack. It's just impossible to defend mathematically. I mean, there's so many pieces on the attack. There's actually 4 attacking pieces. If ever the counting method was useful, it would be like in this sort of situation, where you look at the number of attacking pieces, it just totally outweighs the number of defensive pieces. These kind of scenarios are all possible. It's all pretty much crashing through with coordination. So yeah, a very, very neat aesthetic game, with queen h5 being the final move. Comments or questions on YouTube? Trust your trump cards. Thanks very much.